A Tapestry of Promises by Nathaniel Bishop. In the summer of 1847, the village of Renton nestled itself within the green folds of rolling hills in western Pennsylvania. A quiet settlement with cobblestone streets and clapboard houses, Renton was alive with the hum of industry and the laughter of its people. The village was a microcosm of simpler times, where mornings began with the clang of the blacksmith's hammer and evenings were serenaded by the lowing of cattle. It was here that Eleanor Harper, a seamstress with a quick wit and a stubborn heart, lived and stitched her dreams into life. Eleanor's family had known hardship. After her father's untimely passing from a fever, she and her mother Clara had opened a modest dressmaking shop to make ends meet. By her 22nd year, Eleanor's needlework was the pride of the county. Her hands brought life to fabric, her artistry transforming simple cloth into garments of such elegance that even ladies from neighboring towns sought her out. But Eleanor's heart was her most precious attribute. A dreamer by nature, she longed for a life beyond the confines of her shop, a life where love, not obligation, dictated her choices. One June morning, Eleanor was perched by her window, her needle moving deftly through a bridal gown commissioned by the mayor's daughter. She hummed softly, a melody carried from childhood, when a rumble of wheels on gravel broke her concentration. Outside, a wagon laden with tools and crates pulled to a stop in front of the general store. A tall man climbed down, his hair blown by the journey's wind. His clothes were dusty, and his boots bore the marks of many miles. Yet, his posture was upright, his expression one of quiet determination. His name, Eleanor would later learn, was James Colter, an itinerant carpenter in search of work. The first time Eleanor met James, it was by happenstance. The town council had commissioned him to repair the weather-beaten doors of the church, and Eleanor, delivering fabric to a friend, nearly collided with him in the doorway. "Pardon me," James said, his voice deep but warm, steady like the hills around them. "It's nothing," Eleanor replied, brushing past him. She glanced back, just briefly, catching the faintest smile on his face. James was not the type to be easily overlooked. His broad shoulders hinted at years of labor, yet his eyes carried a softness that suggested an introspective soul. He moved with a quiet confidence, his every action deliberate yet unhurried, as though he had all the time in the world to shape his surroundings. Their next meeting was more deliberate. Renton was small, and word of James' craftsmanship spread quickly. By the time Eleanor heard that he had built a sturdy new set of cabinets for the baker's wife, she found herself curious. That curiosity turned to admiration when she saw his handiwork, a fusion of precision and artistry. Weeks passed, and the carpenter and the seamstress became acquainted through fleeting exchanges, at the market, during Sunday services, and once when James stopped by the dress shop to repair a creaky window frame. "It must be lonely," Eleanor said one afternoon as James worked on the frame. "Traveling as you do." "It has its moments," he admitted, his voice tinged with a wistfulness that made Eleanor's chest tighten. "But the road has a way of teaching you about yourself. Still, I sometimes wonder if there's more to life than just moving from town to town." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a question, a possibility. By midsummer, James had finished his contracted work in Renton, but he lingered, finding odd jobs that tethered him to the village. For Eleanor, his presence became a quiet comfort. His laughter brightened the marketplace. His patience with children endeared him to mothers. Yet, despite his growing attachment to the town, and to her, James was still a man of the road. His past held shadows he had not shared, and his future was uncharted. Eleanor, too, wrestled with her emotions. She had always prided herself on her independence, yet here she was drawn to a man whose life seemed anything but stable. Still, she found herself making excuses to see him, to hear his voice, to feel the warmth of his gaze. The turning point came during the annual Renton Harvest Festival. Lanterns adorned the square, and the air was thick with the scent of cider and roasted chestnuts. Eleanor had spent the day assisting with decorations, her cheeks flushed from exertion in the crisp autumn air. As dusk fell, she found herself standing at the edge of the crowd, watching the townsfolk dance to the lively strains of a fiddle. James appeared at her side, his usual quiet confidence tempered with a touch of hesitation. "Dance with me?" he asked, his hand extended. Eleanor hesitated, her pulse quickening. Then, without a word, she placed her hand in his. They moved to the rhythm of the music, their steps tentative at first, but soon in perfect harmony. The world seemed to fall away, leaving only the warmth of his hand, the strength of his arm, and the unspoken promise in his eyes. When the music slowed, James led her to the edge of the square, where the flickering light of the lanterns softened his features. "I've been meaning to tell you something," he began, his voice low. "Since I came here, I've found more than work. I've found a reason to stay." Eleanor's breath caught. She searched his face, seeing in his eyes a sincerity that melted her doubts. "Then stay," she whispered. As winter approached, James made his intentions clear. "Eleanor," he said one evening, as they strolled along the frost-kissed fields outside the village, "I've traveled many miles, seen many places, but no place, and no one, has felt like home until now." Eleanor's cheeks flushed, both from the cold and his words. "And yet you're a man of the road," she said softly. "How do I know you'll stay?" James stopped, turning to face her. "I can't promise I'll never leave," he admitted. "But I can promise that if I do, I'll always come back to you." It was not the fairy tale declaration Eleanor had dreamed of, but it was honest, and it was enough. Their courtship unfolded like the seasons, each moment imbued with a quiet joy. James began to lay roots in Renton, taking on long-term projects and even purchasing a small plot of land on the edge of town. For Eleanor, life became a delicate balance of work, love, and the whispered doubts that came with trusting her heart. Their wedding, held the following spring, was a modest affair. Eleanor wore a gown she had sewn herself, its simple elegance reflecting her character. James built the wooden arch under which they exchanged vows, his craftsmanship a testament to his love. As they stood before the gathered townsfolk, hands clasped and hearts full, Eleanor felt a peace she had never known. The road that had brought James to her might have been winding and uncertain, but it had led him home, and for that she would always be grateful. In the years that followed, Eleanor and James built a life together, their love growing stronger with each challenge and triumph. Their story became part of the fabric of Renton, a tale of two hearts finding their way to each other despite the odds. And though their lives were far from perfect, they were perfectly theirs, a tapestry of promises kept, dreams shared, and love enduring through the seasons.